In this video, we will be discussing metaphysical principles and how they relate to mathematics.
All right. Well, I don't know mathematical principle. That is your background. So a lot of these questions are going to be geared to you. Okay. And we're just going to have to meld what comes out together. Okay. So the first one we want to talk about are the properties of zero. Okay. I have questions. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And also negative and positives. Okay. So I want the principles of how zero works in mathematics. Tier 1, 2, and 3-dimensional reality. So let's go.
So zero is absence and infinity all at once.
Right.
That's something that you had already had mentioned previously.
Right, but the principles that prove that. So, I mean, I can talk all day and say, well, zero is absence, it takes up space. But we know that zero is absence, it takes up space in an equation, in a mathematical equation. Okay, before a number, it does not take up space. If you put it after a number, it takes up space. So let's talk about that principle. Zero and then tens.
So once we get into with the refraction into three-dimensional reality, zero takes on form of its own. So that when you tack it onto at the end of a number, it does fill that role of taking up space.
Right, but it is not a number. It just changes the characteristics of a number, correct?
Correct.
So 4 would still be the number. The 0 would just turn it into 4D, right? 40.
Yes.
Okay, or 4 to the 10 spot.
Yes, it adds a layer of complexity and multiplicity.
Okay.
But again, once again, it is absence that takes up space.
Right, it's absence that takes up space.
And you get that once you hit the refraction.
Right.
And the reflection is where, so in two-dimensional reality,
right,
is where addition
right,
kind of lies in its
right. 40 still
privacy.
exists in addition, right?
Yes.
So it does exist in two-dimensional reality.
Yes.
So it exists in the reflection also. Okay, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. This
Okay.
is
It does. What about one-dimensional reality?
reality. This is a little mind bending to contemplate, but everything that we talk about exists concurrently across all dimensions.
Right. Yeah.
So something that we say happens in 3 has an effect in 2, has an effect in 1.
Right. That's the as above, so below principle.
Yes.
Yes.
So one-dimensional reality is essentially everything comes to a mathematical point.
Right.
A simple point.
Mm-hmm.
So 0 in that point is nothing, it's everything.
So it's the all.
It's the all.
Okay. So one-dimensional reality, zero and one-dimensional reality essentially proves the all in mathematical theory.
Yes.
Okay. In two-dimensional reality, it proves what?
In two-dimensional reality, you get from 0 the additive identity property for 0, which proves the spirit and the soul of the universe.
Okay. It proves the spirit how? Essentially. Because of addition?
No, I was mistaken.
Okay.
It's the additive identity is what gives form to the numbers.
Okay. So they're going to need you to define additive identity.
Yes, additive identity is the number that, or whatever, that you add to another number that yields the same number.
Okay.
So it says, this property says that 0 plus 4, say, equals 4.
0 equals 4. Equals the same exact thing. That's the additive identity.
That is the additive identity. That's what gives it form in 2 dimensions.
Okay, so in two-dimensional reality, that's what gives 0 form.
Right.
Okay.
Magnitude is something entirely different and 3-dimensional.
Okay.
So form you get from 0, magnitude you'll get from 1.
Okay, and is that because we just did 0 plus. Now what happens when you do multiplication, 0 times?
0 times is where you get, that's where you get the other 0 properties.
Okay,
But that's what generates the foundation for the concepts of the spirit and the soul of the universe.
okay. How?
So this is, you could take the base counting numbers,
Mm-hmm.
which 1 through 9.
Right.
Okay. If you take 1 for example, you multiply it by 0,
You get 0.
it tells us it's 0,
Right.
which is nothing and takes up space.
Okay.
But
Yes.
because you still have that space for the form of the 1. So that 0 is now taking up space
Right.
in two-dimensional reality.
Okay.
And that works for every single counting number.
Right.
So that takes you, it's absence that takes up space, and it's everything. So that is the foundation for the quintessence, the aether, the spirit of the universe.
Okay. Yeah. So it's aether. It's flowing through all things at once, all the time.
And holding everything together.
Yes.
Yes.
And holding everything together. That would be 0's place.
Yes.
Okay. So that is the spirit of the universe.
Right.
Okay. Now let's talk about how is potential.
Now
What is potential in three-dimensional reality? Or
Well,
math?
staying in 2 dimensions for right now.
Okay.
Um,
What is it in 2 dimensions? Potential.
to get the soul of the universe, you would then divide.
You divide what?
You would take one of your counting numbers, again, say 1, and divide it by 0.
Okay.
Mathematically, classically, we're told that doesn't work. It's undefined. But the reason it's undefined is the number shoots up so large it becomes infinity. And that works the same for every single counting number,
Right.
again. So you end up with unlimited,
Potential.
untapped potential.
Okay. And that unlimited untapped potential is
And that is the
Soul.
soul of the universe.
right. Yes, feminine is considered the soul. That's everything's potential. So yeah, okay. And then okay, so yeah, so it becomes a all right. So that's how 0 works. Okay, and kind of proves those two theories. Okay, 2-dimensionally. Now 3-dimensionally. Let's go into 3 dimensions here, and we'll take because in 2 dimensions we have it goes different. Then all of a sudden we have positive and negative too when we get into multiplication. Okay, and we all know a positive times a positive is a positive, and negative times a negative is a positive.
Yes.
Okay, so how do we prove that in mathematical theory as far as, and how can I mean, there's ways to relate that spiritually,
Right.
okay? So negative times a negative is a positive, okay? And
Yes.
I've talked before, and a negative charge is an electron,
Right.
right? But there's something called a positive charged.
It's called
Electron?
it's called an anti-electron
Right.
or a positron.
Or a positron, okay. And that is, so a negative times a negative equals a positron. Electron times an electron would equal a positron? Yes or no? With math?
Mathematically, yes, that can work.
Right,
Physically, you do get a bit of an energy bleed off
okay.
from doing that.
Well, I'm sure you would. Because again, it's positive, it's expressive, you're gonna get energy out. It's
Yeah.
not gonna be potential anymore. You're
Right.
changing the makeup of it. Okay, but in the spiritual world, if we go celestially with it, let's go into like the angelics, it does give credence, at least, to the existence of beings like Sandalphon.
Yes,
Who is
the masculine
masculine,
side of the divine feminine.
But
yes.
he's the divine feminine.
Yes.
Okay, so negative charge, and we're not talking negative as, I mean, at this point, we're not talking negative as fixed energy because fixed is has both masculine and feminine associated with it. Now we're talking more like a circuit charge.
Right. This is positive and negative is the dual polarity that we would establish from two-dimensional reality. That's not
Right.
You know, that's not talking anything, say, graceful or fallen or anything like that. It's simply a dual polarity.
No, right. It's just a dual polarity. But electrons, though, that's the energy that's going through a circuit.
Yes.
It's not protons. It's electrons that are cycling through. One of it, though, in scientific terms, we call the hot side masculine. We say the side feminine, or positive and negative.
Right.
But we're not talking about
and that
the
determines
positive and
how
negative
the
of an atom. We're talking two different things now.
right.
Okay. I just want to make that clear to everybody
Right.
out there, so we don't get them
Well,
confused.
and that breakdown
But
of the
if that
electrical
electron
circuit.
circuit is like that, it gives rise to essentially celestial beings running the same type of circuits, the energy running the same type of circuits. So you could have a masculine angel representing the divine feminine, just like you have negatively charged particles acting as positively charged in an electrical circuit. Okay?
Yes.
Still having to utilize, though, the proton to close the circuit, okay, which initiates the
Right.
energy,
Yes.
okay, and you would need the absence, essentially, that takes up space for grounding the circuit. Not grounding the energy, but grounding the circuit, so that the circuit continues to flow and doesn't, as we know from what's
Right.
happened in the past, when circuits weren't grounded, fires erupted and things blew up.
Right. Yes. So there's not a massive discharge of unbalanced energy.
Right. And again, we can say neutrons will take that form, okay?
Right.
Because that's essentially what they do for protons in the nucleus. They keep them balanced.
Yes.
Because protons do not get along together
Right.
by themselves. All right. Okay. And then, just for a point, to prove, again, that two-dimensionality exists in three, we do have one periodic table element that is just positive and negative and has no neutrons in it.
Yes. Hydrogen.
Yes. 'Cause it's
As
one
long as it's
each.
not heavy hydrogen.
Right.
Yes.
But-
The stable element of hydrogen has one proton and one electron.
Exactly. Yes. So that's the existence of two-dimensionality within three, as far as science is concerned on the periodic table.
Yes.
Okay. We can go back, kind of like what the platypus did to Darwin. By a mammal laying eggs.
Yes.
Some people say it destroyed the theory. I don't think it destroyed the theory. It just opened it up, to me,
Right.
to possibility. And the spiritual side of things. Not through the kink in the armor. It's like, no, it's not concrete. The dogma's doesn't stick.
Right.
Doesn't say,
Well,
doesn't mean
and
evolution doesn't exist. It just means it doesn't
The
follow concrete rules that they said.
Yes. The dogma is what turns most people off to much of anything, and
Well, it also stops you from growing.
the fundamental thing that we have to remember to keep in check as
Mm-hmm.
human beings is our ego.
Right.
We have to accept the fact that we do not know everything.
No, yeah, that's true. Yeah. No, we don't. We never will.
There's no way that we possibly could.
And we never will. And we shouldn't. We know enough. Essentially.
We know enough,
know,
and we
and what we need to do.
can continue learning.
Right.
And that's how life can be fulfilling and challenging and keep us
Well,
going.
Yes, it can. But when we start getting into the concepts like we're getting into in this discussion,
Yes.
it's essentially allowing yourself the ability at some point to utilize your mind the way that you would a computer
Right.
and the internet, except the internet's fake and this is real.
Right.
So the ability to tap in, and I think that's what's missing from a lot of people who are stuck in the non-reality of the internet.
Well, this is
why they're not. They
slightly
don't feel fulfilled.
mind bending because we are taught these mathematical principles as early as elementary school,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't know why they work, what they do, or any of the hidden meanings behind them.
Well, no, that was a split that happened a long time ago. And it's not a division. That was a complete separation between essentially science and spirituality. Just went, thump, see ya,
Yes.
and left each other in the dust because of a lot of what you were saying, dogmas behind the two. Not to mention the egos behind the two. And I need to be right, you need to be wrong. We can't work together, it has to be separate.
Right.
But I agree with you. I mean, most of the people I've read, like Einstein, those people, they were very spiritual people. I believe Einstein's the one that said, religion without science is deadly, and science without religion is ignorant.
Right.
Or no, science without religion is deadly, religion without science is ignorance.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I had it backwards.
Right.
But yes, that quote is, it's clarifying with things, okay? And it's essentially why you can't get fulfillment out of a two-dimensional screen. You can learn a lot, you can have access to a lot from things that you can look up on the internet. But as far as the processing of all of it and actually creating things that are beneficial to humanity.
It has no meaning in three-dimensional. Right. It has no meaning in three-dimensional reality though until you put action to what you have learned.
Yes.
To create something, to
Yes.
improve something.
And for all of you really young
help
people out there, you will never have the attributes of the players that you're playing in your games. I just bring that up because I had somebody that actually thought that, a friend of mine.
Well, and that goes to the arguments for against violent video games, against the different things.
Right.
With the supposed psychological argument that it helps induce mass shootings and stuff like this.
The only way I think that it could help induce mass shootings of any kind is the fact that it's not real. But the people playing them convince themselves that it kind of is, and they lose their morals and ethics.
Right.
Because they think to themselves, well, this is what killing somebody is. When it's not at all what killing somebody is. It's a game.
Right.
And they take it on, especially young people, as a reality because it's kind of given to them as one. It's kind of a replacement of, I don't have to spend time messing with you, I can give you this. And this will distract you, and this can teach you that. But you need the intimate learning environment of another person.
Right. You need interpersonal interaction.
Yes.
There is no substitute for that.
Yeah, there isn't. And they're trying to create one, but it doesn't exist. I mean, it can't work.
Well, fundamentally, it can't work because, this is three-dimensional reality. This is, we exist here.
Well, there's no
together.
spiritual, there's nothing spiritual about it.
Right.
I mean, and from what we've just talked about, if neutrons being spiritual, that's 1/3 of all of the energy anywhere.
Right.
And we've, as a society, cast that to the side, except for church. But it's a part of everything else.
Right.
And that was one of the things it
So
used to be discussed quite often. Plotinus, Porphyry, Iamblichus, Hippocrates, Plato, Aristotle, they all talked about those things. They all discussed those things. And then when science split, it took 1/3 of everything they discussed and just buried it.
Threw it to the
Like
wayside,
it
and that's
like it didn't exist.
But it's rational discussions in the academic world now too, are more fights than they are actual.
Right. And now that you bring that up,
discussion.
we have something else we need to talk about. Fractions and decimals. Okay? Because there's an infinite number of them, and they lie between two numbers, whole numbers.
Yes.
Okay? And then, like I said, I was essentially destroyed a relationship with a physics professor I knew because I asked him, how can you add two whole numbers together when there's an infinite number of fractions or decimals that lie between them? And our discussions just kind of ceased. So, for you, we've already kind of talked about zero, okay, and what zero does. And you said it blows up and it does things, but it doesn't change what it is, correct? It's still absence.
Correct. It is still absence.
Okay, and whole numbers, if you add whole numbers, they change what they are, or if you put whole numbers together, it changes things,
It's
but
the magnitude
fractions
change,
don't,
yes.
right? Because 2 1/4, you can put 2 1/4 and 1 1/4, a quarter still stays the same.
Right. And that comes to us from, I think we had established one-dimensional reality.
Yeah.
The point, it's everything and nothing all at once. Everything is the same. It cycles through the same.
Right.
So anything represented in this point is going to cycle through the exact same through two-dimensional reality, through three-dimensional reality.
Right.
That's why you can take a number, say 1 1/4,
Right.
and 2 1/4, and the quarter is the same.
Right. It still represents exactly the same thing.
It still has the
You
exact
can
same
multiply them,
representation.
you can add them, you can subtract them, you can divide them.
Yes,
Okay, but they still mean exactly the same thing.
right.
The meanings don't change.
So but it comes that the realm where fractions pop into existence, into having any kind of meaning, is that one-dimensional reality, the infinite in the finite,
Right. Yes.
and it's an endless cycle.
Right. Which is why, even though there's an infinite number of those that work, you can break a whole number into 4 parts. Since a quarter is 1/4 of that.
Right,
Where you can say that would be the finite expression. The infinite expression would be there's an infinite number of them though. You can go on forever if you keep going either way.
right, right. But that's also how you can drop them off, say, if it's an infinite number of zeros following the decimal point.
Mm-hmm.
So you can take whole numbers and add them together.
Right.
Because again, it is the infinite in the finite.
Yeah.
So you're able to actually do that, and
Yeah, the infinite-
it makes sense.
Yes, it does. It works. And it works. Yes. Yes. It's 1, 2, and 3-dimensional reality working together.
Right.
In that
And
form.
that's like I had mentioned before. That's probably the most mind blowing thing of this is everything that we do carries through all of the dimensions.
Yes.
So we can perform operations in this three-dimensional reality, and it's going to have implications.
Oh, yeah. That's
Into-
again. That's that principle
and
of as above, so below. That
Right.
goes back to hermeneutics.
Right.
Yes. Yes, and it kind of proves that.
Right.
And motion with vibration and all of that. It's the same thing. I mean, that's the interesting part. Every time that we seem to jump into a different area, this one, I have the spiritual background. I don't have the mathematical.
Right.
Your mathematical gave me the principles I needed to. Okay, this is how this actually all works. Can be defined, and you can make it practical.
Right.
Because that's the hard part, is getting lost in theory where you just turn into a group of old people sitting around a room talking for hours and going, oh, that was so awesome, but there's there's nothing practical about it.
Right.
Okay, this adds the practicality to it. If you're getting into any like healings and things, you can actually make up an equation or an astrological chart and understand how all the breakdowns work through those angles,
Right,
and different
right.
things. Saying,
Well,
okay, here's
and
where we have
understanding
all this
how
stuff.
understanding how the math works through the dimensional realities could help you with the law of unintended consequences.
Yes, yes. And you could also put that in a chart form, and the chart would show you the, like, oh, you've got this energy and this energy together and you're trining it, and that's awesome, but unfortunately it creates a semi-square to this.
Right.
So you have to take care of this. Otherwise, when this breaks, that's gonna mess things up
Right.
in this way. Or you factor it in and say, okay, I know it's gonna do this. How do I work that positively?
Right.
And put that into your, into the prayer or whatever.
Right. Exactly. How do you negate it? How do you
Right.
flip the
How do you visualize it? and
flip
go?
the polarity?
Yeah, between the negative aspects and the positive. Yeah.
Right.
It's the same thing, because everything has that.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're good with this one.
Fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got more to discuss on this topic, but
Yes.
we'll
This has
do
been enough for everybody, I think.
we'll do more videos coming up as we progress through our number system.
Definitely, yes. This one went well, yes. I like it.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. We hope you learned something, and do remember to like and subscribe. Thank you.